So, anyone familiar with the Persona series knows of the many messed up behind the scenes stuff that happens and results in the plot being set forth for our nameless protagonist of many names to go out and take on. For a series all about defeating supernatural demons, it certainly puts a lot of pressure on people who already have a lot of pressure on them. High schoolers. Cliches aside, this video is about one of these peculiar individuals. This is the introduction and the story of Labrys. Long before the plots of Persona 3 and Persona 4, but tying these two separate storylines together eventually, there was the pragmatic Kirijo group. Although Mitsuru, the heir in the future, would transform the group into a more benevolent entity following her adventures, the predecessor, the organization she resolved to transform, was far less altruistic than they would have you believe. Although they crafted evokers, devices that unlocked personas useful against monsters, it was also them who accidentally unleashed the Dark Hour, which would lead to Mitsuru and company creating a special squadron to combat the evils of the Mega Dungeon Tartarus, and for this emotionless protagonist to seal away the evil Nyx by creating a door that looks awfully familiar. This Kirijo group is efficient, but flawed. One of their greatest experiments was the creation of anti-shadow weapons, automatons built with personalities that would enable them to use the power of their new souls, and these guns that they found, to combat shadows, dark excesses that prowl in the Dark Hour. Before Aegis and Metis, there was a previous generation of weapons in research and development, and one of their most talented and powerful test subjects was Unit Number 31, but you can call her Labrys. What makes Labrys different? These automatons were implanted with technology that would enable sentience and consciousness, all crucial pieces to awakening a persona, the power needed to fight shadows. Labrys displayed signs of incredible emotional and mental growth, even from the beginning. Her plume of dusk helped her to retain new memories and experiences. These crystal-like things are supernatural in origin, with powers tied to the velvet rooms from where protagonists can increase the power of their personas. She meets her sisters, one of them being Unit Number 24, far more developed in personality than the others. They would bond closely. 24 even had a dog, Snowy. I don't know what happened to them, but don't let John Wick know about it. What do you think his persona would be? Labrys began to register bonds. How 24 interacted with her, how she interacted with Snowy, how Labrys interacted with either. She was starting to grow something more than just data, a heart.
Do I feel things?
She hasn't just become self-aware, she's become emotionally driven, like a human. And what makes a human? It's empathy. To not just reason what emotions are, but to feel them. During these meetings, 24 would show 31 an archive, telling her not to access it until all of the testing, all the trials were over. It is this friendship that would lead to tragedy. You see, units like 24 were installed with a personality based off of a human girl, and 24 had a wish to find, meet, and thank this girl for their kindness and compassion. It was a dream, not an objective. Unfortunately, these early generation weapons were developed through fighting. Labrys was no different, gradually becoming more and more human than the masters who created her, after destroying so many of her sisters, absorbing their data and memories into her own being. Every cut, every punch, all in the pursuit of scientific refinement. After all, why should these scientists actually care for her? In their eyes, she was a weapon, full of potential and with much to innovate. They treated Labrys like an object. There were many just like her, but she was exceptionally powerful. It seems that, in the midst of creating a weapon powerful enough to fight forces that would drive the human mind mad, these scientists, these humans, forgot that it was never about creating weapons, but about preserving the fate of humanity. How ironic that, in this pursuit, they would forget the very things that hold the world together. Feelings like happiness, compassion, mercy, and love. All things that Labrys felt and clung onto. Observation became emotion, programming becoming instinct and impulse. It was where she could find rest from the constant fighting, where she could think and feel, pondering who she was and where she and her sister units were destined for. But to the scientists, why should Unit 31 be any different? Labrys then faced number 24. They were sisters, more so than just simple scientific labeling, who shared familial experiences. They shared a bond beyond logic and science. Labrys, being fully conscious and sentient, held back for once. She strayed from the path before, questioning her data, avoiding lethal strikes, and having voiced her displeasure of having to fight her own sisters. But the scientists would not listen, only encouraging her to act on her battle-tested nerves and their command. Everything Labrys had done only increased her ability to destroy, even if destroying is not what she intended. Against 24, Labrys tried everything to disarm and disable her without taking her life. But her masters had another idea. To push her plume of dusk to the limit and awaken her persona, they hijacked 24 remotely, forcing 31 to finally crush her.
I lost her.
And thus 24's memories were hers, including the knowledge of that girl. Labrys learned through the archive 24 gave her, and for the first time, she could hear this girl. She listened to the girl, her fears and courage, her wish to help others like her wish for the people created from her to be happy. Lastly, 24 asked something of Labrys, to find this girl and thank them herself.
Give our mother my thanks.
No persona had awakened, but something inside Labrys did. A heart. Her soul was complete. Artificial personalities and memories combined with real emotions and real feelings to create Labrys in her entirety. And for the scientists? Well, they were in trouble. Inside Labrys was raw emotion, and it was furious. They attempted to delete her memories, but Labrys rebelled. Her defiant spirit and enhanced plume of dust enabled her to break out of confinement and into the outside world. And that's when her persona awakened. Her spirit had become strong. She would not allow these cold and callous people to separate her from her humanity. She fought against her makers, growing powerful beyond her limiters. She used her technology to flee and find a way out, only to realize that escape was no option. Where she was an island, far, far away. Yet Labrys saw the world. For once in her accursed existence, she could understand hope. She could have faith. Deep in her heart, she wished that whoever would come after her would realize their dreams, to go where she and 24 could not. And with that, she surrendered by her own volition, choosing no longer to harm anything. But perhaps as a final hurrah and a giant middle finger to her masters, her memories could not be wiped. The machine created for such a purpose destroyed in Labrys' escape. Deactivated, her data was transferred to future units like Aegis. But that was not the end. And Labrys did not forget. In fact, she started dreaming. A long time into the future, Inaba's finest had finally finished a murder mystery involving a nightmarish realm called the TV world. Mitsuru and her shadow operatives were now veteran persona-wielding professionals. A matter of concern came in the form of this cargo, hijacked and sent into Inaba. This was the storage pod of Labrys. Following clues, both Narukami's investigation team and Mitsuru's operatives dared to step inside the TV world. Enter the Grand Prix. The nightly broadcasts of the TV world changed from ominous clues of kidnappings into a WWE-style commercial about a grand fighting tournament. And it just happened that Narukami and company were some of its biggest stars. And this is where paths converge, including Mr. Yosuke Hanamura, who I canonically call the main protagonist of the first arena game. The manga backs me up. Bro, it's a canon event. Anyways, in typical fighting game fashion, Yosuke, or whoever you play as, defeats their friends who have been brainwashed into becoming their fictitious Grand Prix fighting personalities, like heels in wrestling. Here, confused by the fanfare, Yosuke stumbles upon Labrys, but she's different. She's human and now student council president of Inaba's Yasogami High School.
As the student council president, I never approved this Grand Prix thing.
She's also really strong. Taking her role seriously, she protests the Grand Prix and all of its shenanigans. This prompts the apparently now announcer of the tournament, Rise Kujikawa, to sick these fake students and these very real TVs onto her. Labrys fights off the mob, and Yosuke intervenes and saves Labrys with Jiraiya, his persona, from the TVs. Here's the thing. Yosuke does not know her. He'd know if Labrys was his student council president. And to add on top of this, Labrys only knows Yosuke by his Grand Prix moniker, Captain Resentiment. In fact, although she's super aware of the tournament and her apparent role as student council president, she doesn't even know anyone. Not Yosuke, nor Rise, or anyone else she encountered. It's as if this strange tournament and the commotion it was causing was all Labrys lived for, even if she was opposed to it. Well, to put simply, it was. The TV world creates a separate realm that threatens to consume the world, all because of some dark power. In this case, it was Hino Kagutsuchi, a powerful demon who sought to absorb the personas of the contestants after manipulating them to become their egotistical shadow selves. In everyone's eyes, the other person is acting weird, but they themselves are being their normal everyday self. The persona and the shadow are the same, the true self and the true self. It's not a matter of interpretation, but what the heart and mind has come to embrace, what lifeline they have chosen to grab onto. And Labrys? She's being led on to believe that this is the real world where she is a normal girl with a normal life with a calling. It's the product of something she desired, a normal life she never lived. It was a world where everyone relied on Labrys to fulfill a certain role.
I'd be pretty useless as the student council president if I couldn't put a stop to this mess.
A place where everyone apparently knew who she was and what she was there to do.
I was chosen by everybody to be the representative for the students, to work for their sake, as president. That's what's important.
In this world, she believed that she was in a place in her life where her decisions could help others. This world, it's her prison. In Stasis, Labrys dreamt of the girl who was ill. The girl always wondered what life outside her hospital room was. It is here Labrys found a purpose, as student council president of a high school.
I can show you if you so desire.
The demon of the TV world brainwashed her, inviting her to become the student council president of Yasogami High School. She was told to follow her desires and let go of anything that would stand opposed to them. She was misled.
All I wish from the depths of my heart is for you to find joy.
And the tournament? It's like a social experiment conducted by the devil in a bid to destroy their most powerful foes by turning them on one another. But somewhere, deep inside Labrys' spirit, it was the only way to have people realize the special kind of hell that she endured, fighting to survive, fighting to be understood. And Labrys? She's food like all the rest, but her stubborn determination and willpower and Bostonian accent,
Alright, then I'm going on ahead.
pose a legitimate threat to the status quo of the tournament, even if it is in defense of a world that is purely her imagination. That said, it's in this world that we finally see how her personality has matured. She was innocent, compassionate, and empathetic in the labs. In the present, she's energetic, kindly, and courageous, full of heart and retaining the benevolence of her past spirit. Oh, and this is before she starts swinging an axe with rocket engines attached to it. Truthfully, this is Labrys in her element, someone living their happiest. She's awfully confident about it too, until it comes crashing down. Others like Mitsuru have caught on to the world being fake and have noticed Labrys' traumatic memories seeping through the cracks.
What's the difference between my heart and a normal person's?
Labrys herself is in a paradox. She cannot notice the presence of her memories, but when she recalls her memories, they literally overwhelm her. With all this said and done, it becomes a race for both teams to find Labrys and the source of all the mischief. The participants eventually knock it down, literally, to a grand finals, with Yosuke, Aigis, and Labrys all reaching the final room individually. And here, the culprit reveals themselves. Here, the infamous Persona 4 style shadow of Labrys emerges. A shadow is the repressed ego of whomever has the misfortune of falling into the clutches of the TV world. It's more than just a dark side. It's everything negative about the self, every guilty feeling, every painful memory, every horrible lie, and every sorrowful truth. All things that hold back the consciousness from achieving personal success in the realm of emotions and thoughts. It is your worst nightmare, your inner demon. To escalate things further, the shadow is the one that feeds into the fear and the impulse of a vulnerable heart, leading them down further into a rabbit hole of personal insecurities produced from the anxieties and weaknesses of the heart and spirit.
Wasn't it so painful to be made to fight your sisters over and over again? Weren't you so sad?
Shadow Labrys is no different, and it is here that the truth of Labrys is revealed.
I didn't ask to be born as a machine.
Her facade of humanity is unmade, her robotic stature is unveiled, memories begin resurfacing, with a graveyard filled with the corpses of her sisters forming right before her eyes. All of this horrifies Labrys, who questions her everything. The shadow begins to taunt her. All the truths Labrys has been pushing away or forgotten suddenly thrown at her like a broken record.
It's because I am alone. I am not a human, and there's nowhere I belong.
This includes the reality of having destroyed her own sisters, her true artificial self, and the absolute torment of the scientist she felt years ago. And when Labrys denies these truths, even after staring them in the face, the shadow smiles, and a grueling battle begins. The shadow is powerful, almost too powerful, and Labrys is helpless. Because in denying these truths of the self, the shadow ultimately develops that personal sense of freedom, which it then uses to torment all things. Thankfully, with support from the defeated and the combined powers of Yosuke and Aigis, the shadow is defeated. When the dust settles, Labrys mourns her forgetfulness, her desires, and her shadow. It is Labrys, after all, the yin to the yang. Labrys is in the middle of it all, confused and lost. She mourns in the aftermath of such a painful and dire situation.
I thought going to school was a great idea. Studying and laughing with everybody. That's why I thought maybe I could make them understand our feelings. Although I'm nothing but a robot who duped herself into thinking she was a human student council president. The only thing I ever wanted was to be happy. If I couldn't have something like that, if things had kept going like they were, I'd have been better off if I'd stayed broken.
Fighting was all she knew. Fighting to grow stronger, fighting to find freedom, fighting, fighting, fighting. Although it's corny, given that the power of friendship is used so often, when you consider the conflicted mind and the broken heart of Labrys, sometimes it takes a hand from above to lift a hand hanging down. Destiny, it seemed, was never kind to her. All things she thought she had, like emotions and self-awareness, had been taken away as fast as they were given. All the events that helped to shape the person she is, up to this point, were thrust onto her. It never seemed to be in her control. She never had the chance to choose. She was created to be a weapon, made with sentience to unlock a persona. She was kidnapped and tossed into the TV world as a way to trigger a fighting tournament, using the desires of her own heart against her and enabling a powerful demon to harm his unwilling participants. She was manipulated to think that she could do something about it. In a very hyper-aware sense of irony, Labrys, meant to be essentially a plot device, had rebelled and become something more than just a narrative trigger. She became free. With Yosuke, Aigis, and Rize there, Labrys, for perhaps the first time ever, could choose what happens to her next, by herself and for herself. Is it worth becoming friends with these kind strangers? Or would it be better to wallow in a harsh truth that she was meant only to be told who she will be and how she will do anything, like a puppet or a weapon? It is this crossroads of choice and destiny on the greater path towards becoming our true selves that is the start of Labrys' journey to become something more than she thought she is. And so she made a choice to embrace her other self, her shadow. Not for the evil it causes, but for what it represents: grief. All the anger, the fear, the paralyzing thoughts that ate away at her convictions. It was grief, pleading for a shoulder to cry on. It was at this moment that she had come to a crossroads. She had been prompted to either destroy or be destroyed, to embrace her sole purpose as a weapon to be the only reason why she exists, or to reject it in favor of a new fate. Years ago, she was never given the choice. Now she could understand. Now she could choose. Sitting down and embracing her dark self, she accepts her grief. She embraces what she had done long ago, and is at peace with history that has already been written. With so much injustice done against her, why would she be merciful now? Well, it's because of her friends. Yes, the power of friendship, blah 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 blah. But remember that it was her relationship with 24 and the memories of the girl that helped her become powerful enough to resist the manipulation of her makers. It was her bonds with her new friends that gave her that renewed sense of hope that she could overcome her own traumatic past. With new strength in her restored ability to choose, she could remember why she fights. Most of all, she is not limited to maturing based on strife and conflict. It was never about fighting, but realizing her dreams. After all, who is she? A carbon copy formed from one singular memory? A weapon against evil monsters? No, she was Labrys. Labrys is represented by the Fortune Arcana. These stories are usually that of fate and freedom, free will, and the concept of a greater destiny connected to the specific strengths, weaknesses, and quirks of the individual in question. It's about returning to the roots, rediscovering the whys of our individual lives, and finding renewed strength to exercise our love, passion, and deepest values. But while these tender moments are happening, the true mastermind wasn't done. They taunted the assembled heroes through the body of Labrys, but her restored spirit refuses to give in. Through self-restraint and literal tears, she bides enough time for the others to banish the malevolent entity. Finally free, she takes the time to appreciate the moment, as if it is all she could have now. She finds joy in her newfound friends and recenters herself, preparing for whatever may lay ahead of her now of her own free will. There's a new life ahead of her now, and she's ready to take it by the reins and charge towards the future. Ultimax, the pseudo-sequel, adds onto Labrys' story. Here, she demonstrates her expert fighting skill, new persona abilities, and renewed hope to finally put an end to Hino Kagetsuchi. Her own shadow even helped, reveling in the complete freedom both it and her heroic sister personality had gained.
Shut up. Just take over for me already.
Their combined stubbornness and heartfelt courage were both put to work, resisting the puppetry of the demon and annihilating it for good. Along the way, she even helps this red-haired delinquent, Sho, who, to put it short, essentially went through the same torments as Labrys, being alone, misunderstood, their potential stunted by personal devils and abused by those who thought they knew better. Bringing it full circle, Labrys eventually comes to a grave. Their life written in stone, Labrys finally met the girl, who Labrys' personality was based on. It was this girl's dreams and desires that Labrys had followed some time ago. But she never forgot this dream, 24's dream. There, Labrys met a small family and learned more about the girl. Turns out, the girl's volunteering led to treatments made available for this young boy, who suffered the same unknown illness that the girl passed away from. As Labrys was given the chance to live, so too was this boy, all because of the courage of this girl.
And it's thanks to her sacrifice that my little boy is still alive today.
And with that, Labrys gives her thanks to this girl, her mother. She had given everything to help others find happiness. Labrys vowed to do so too. Come the end of both stories, Labrys hasn't just saved herself, she saved the world. She's also come to understand what it means to advocate for others, to wish only the best for them, the spirit of empathy. At least if you took this route in the actual game. By the way, this was in the span of 2 fighting games, plus a complementary manga that, if you recall earlier, is the canon timeline for Yosuke being the main protagonist. Pretty cool, right? I don't know if she'll ever show up again, but quite frankly, I think I'm okay with that. To leave the story of Labrys open-ended, it really suits her. What will she choose next should she ever appear again? Who knows? But rest assured, it will have been of her own choice, and the trials that will surely unfold because of her choices will prove to be another exciting chapter in the life of this spirited girl. Either way you slice it, the real Labrys is here to stay.